Hi, welcome to the CSS Zero to Hero course. In this course, you're going to completely learn how to use CSS from the ground up. We're going to cover every single concept or every major concept in CSS and really build up our knowledge of it. So before we move on, I just wanted to give you some motivation on what you're going to be doing in this course, so you can really get excited about the course and just jump straight into learning. So first of all, let's look at some of the stuff that we've done over the course. Now, we start with a base website, and over time, we style this and change up the website using every technique that we've learned. So you can see that we've created multiple grids, colors, we've changed this completely and transformed the website in every single way. We've also created things like gradients, and we've also changed our custom fonts, colors, and backgrounds. We cover all of this in depth throughout the course, and we do it step by step so that you don't rush through and forget anything. At the end of the course, there's also a little challenge here where you try to bring all your skills together and style a website from scratch. Now, there is a solution video if you need it. Maybe you just want to see another opinion on it. But pretty much, you're going to bring all the skills you learned in this course together and create this nice website. It's responsive, it's got all sorts of layout features, and it also has animations. You can see just like that. So that's some of the actual website stuff we're going to be doing in the course, but why don't we look at some of the code that we've written. So I created this file from the start. I didn't have it at the start of this course, but at the end, you can see that we've written now well over 100 lines of code here. And although it may look intimidating now, I do explain every single part of it so that at the end, you can just read this straight away and understand what's going on in an instant. There's also the styling for our solution video, or for the solution to the challenge here. So you can see we've got a bunch of stuff here. And like I said, it may look confusing, but once we move on, this will make a lot more sense. So that's pretty much it for the little achievements video for this course. I hope you're a little bit motivated and excited to go forward and start learning about CSS. It's a pretty exciting topic, and it can really advance your web development if you don't already know it. All right, let's get straight into it. So in this video, I'm going to be giving a quick introduction to the syllabus of the course. Now, it is quite a long video, so if you don't want to watch it, or if you don't really want to know an in-depth analysis on what the course is going to be covering, then you can go ahead and skip this video. All I say is that please make sure that you read the prerequisites lecture that came before this. Now, there are some very important details in there and some skills that you need to know to move on with this course. And if you don't know them, you're going to have a very difficult time picking up some of the language. Now, there's only one real prerequisite, which is HTML, but you can go ahead and read that and just make sure that you have all the skills necessary. All right, so let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the section structure. So the section is just a bunch of lectures. So these are video lectures, and they're made in an interactive way. So you can see in this picture here, I am coding along with a nice preview on the side showing what our progress looks like. So at the end of each section is a 10 question multiple choice quiz that covers all of the skills learned in that section. So it's really encouraged to go and just try it out and see if you know everything, and then that way you can diagnose yourself and see maybe there's some skills that you're fuzzy on or you need to revisit. And on top of that, I really encourage everyone who is following along in the course to not just watch and be a passive consumer, really go out and try and use your skills, because you're not going to learn it otherwise. You're just going to end up having the information on your head. And especially when it comes to development, programming, experience is everything. You can't just watch lectures and just magically be able to do it. So I encourage you to go off and follow the lectures and try and really use the skills that you learn in your own time, and that will make sure that you have the highest retention possible. So let's get straight into it. The first section, which is the section we're in right now, is the introductory section. So setting up the course, and we also install all the programs and software necessary to set up our working environment. So you can follow along, it's not necessary, but it is highly recommended, because if you're you're using maybe something else that you're not experienced with, you may have a hard time getting used to the program and things like that. So I recommend you follow along and set up the environment just like I do. So the second the second section is the introduction to CSS. Now, unlike the first section, this is going to be looking at introducing the actual CSS language. We're going to be looking at some theory behind it, where it's used, and what kind of a difference it makes. We're also going to be looking at creating and linking our own CSS document to our page. So the third section is going to be looking at our first real part of CSS. So these are the selectors and properties. Now again, you don't need to know any of these terms. I'm just going over like a kind of a spitball kind of effect here, just trying to just skim over everything. So here we're going to learn about a very important concept, which are selectors and properties, and how they really play into CSS. We're also going to be learning about the different types of selectors and where to use each one depending on the situation. So you're going to learn that as well. Next section is where we start using the real power of CSS. So we're going to start using colors, and we're going to be applying those colors to our page. So we're going to be learning about different color types, a little bit of how colors are set up on the computer. So things like RGB, other color codes, and then we're going to use them and apply them using CSS to backgrounds and text and all sorts of other things. The next section is going to be looking mainly at text. So we're going to be looking at trying to change the feel, style, and look of text. So we're going to be changing the fonts, the size. We're also going to be changing the bolding. There are so many different things that you can do in this section, and we're going to cover all of them then. So the next section is where we kind of take a turn from looking at styling and looking now at layout. So we're going to be learning some more fundamental CSS concepts related to layout. We'll talk about those when we get to it. Then we're going to be applying them to actually change the style or the layout of our page. So we're going to be moving items around. We're going to resize them and do all sorts of things with them once we get to that point. The next section we're going to look at is called Flexbox. Now, I'm sure you've heard of this if you've looked into any web development, but pretty much it's an alternate way to mess around with the layout in CSS. And it is quite new, but it is a pretty commonly used concept today, especially for responsive layouts, making websites that can work on all devices. So it's a pretty important concept there. So we're going to focus on the theory behind Flexbox first, talking about how it works, how it's set up. And then we're also going to be applying it to real life, talking about, where it can be used, some of the benefits, and then actually using it in our own project by creating our own Flexbox and messing around with it. So we're going to do that as well. So the next section is pretty similar to section 7. It's going to be looking at another alternative to using normal layout features in CSS. It's called grid, and there are a lot of similarities, but we're also going to be talking about the differences. So along with going over a comprehensive overview of kind of how grid works, we're also going to be going over some of the similarities and differences, kind of comparing it to Flexbox. And then we're going to talk about, which one you should use in each individual situation. So the next section is probably one of my favorites because it really puts all of the older kind of websites from the new sites and separates them, the modern sites from the old sites. And we're going to be looking at animations and transitions. So first we're going to look at transitions and how to use pseudo selectors. Again, don't worry about that, what it means, to create these nice smooth transitions. And then we're also going to be learning how to manipulate them. So kind of change how a transition looks. We're also going to learn how to create, apply, and manipulate our own animations. So we create these animations from scratch using CSS, and then we can kind of change them and change how they look based on what we want. So the last section is a really interesting section which kind of summarizes everything and tests your skills. So it starts with a 30-question final exam, which is a bunch of questions from every single section or topic that we've covered, and it is a final exam, so there is like a passing grade and everything like that. But again, if you fail, there's no real consequences to it. It's just kind of a diagnostic tool to test where you are in your CSS knowledge. And after that, it's followed by a really nice challenge, which can help you, really see where you're at, not from a theoretical standpoint, but from an actual practical standpoint. So this challenge is going to be talked about later once you get to that point, but pretty much you're going to be styling a website from scratch. You're going to be given a blank HTML document, or well, it's not blank, it's going to have content, but you're going to be given an HTML document with no styling, and you have to style it yourself based on a list of tasks given in the document. Now, don't worry too much about that, but pretty much there is a solution video that I created to style it based on how I want the website to look. But again, it's not kind of like an iron fist thing. You can go and be creative with it once you get to that point. Because once you learn all that CSS, what's the point if you just have to conform to something? You can really unleash your creative freedom through CSS once you learn all the skills necessary. So again, it will be talked about in a lot more detail once we get to that point. But for now, that's just a quick overview of what it's going to look like from here. All right, so there's a quick overview of what the course is going to go over, some of the topics. Now, again, this isn't a, kind of a strict video on, this is what we're going to learn, and if you don't learn it, that's it. It's just kind of showing you what you're going to be getting out of the course so that you can really get a view into it before you start working on the course. All right, let's get started. So in this video, I'm just going to be talking about some of the software that we're going to be using in this course. Now, there's not a lot of actual software since most of the stuff we're going to be doing is built straight into CSS and HTML, but we do need a text editor. And if you want to go ahead and use Notepad, go ahead, but I wouldn't really recommend that because it is quite hard to use when you're developing things. So I recommend this text editor right here. It's called Sublime Text. It gives you all of the color coding and formatting that you need. It makes things really easy for you. So you can go ahead to the website here. It's attached to the lecture resources. If you go ahead and click in the top left corner in the bullet list icon, you can go ahead and find the lecture contents and downloadable resources. So go ahead, check out this website, and depending whether you're on Windows or Mac or Linux, you go ahead and download this. And yeah, that should be pretty much it. So this is what it's going to look like when you're inside. I was just typing a little bit of stuff here, making sure things were working. So there you go. This is what it's going to look like. Once you download it, we'll go through and actually set everything up as we go through this course. All right, let's move on. So before we move on, I just want to talk about finding project files. Now, I do a lot of code throughout each lecture, and if you want to keep track of those or maybe have some sort of working reference of what's going on, then I highly recommend that you go and check out the GitHub repository that I created for all the content of this course. Now, if you don't know what Git is or how to use it, don't worry. I'm going to show an alternative to that in just a second using this platform. But pretty much this is going to contain all the history of every single lecture. Now, if you know how to use Git, you can download this and check out each state. But if you don't know, then all you have to do is head over to the main page. And right here under commits, it's pretty much going to show every single lecture change. So for example, I have 7 to 8 item alignment. So I can click on it. And when I click on this, it shows all of the changes I have made to both files or any files that I've changed. So for example, you can see here, it has one changed file, and you can see I've added a bunch of stuff here. So you can kind of review what I've done over the lecture. So you can just go ahead and check it out. I've attached this to the lecture resources if you want to go and look at it now. This does contain all of the history, all of the things that I've done over the course. So you can go review, maybe look at the code, and you can also download it. You can download the actual file or the repository from here. So you can just download that very easily. And other than that, you can find all of the project files on here if you ever need them. So if you want to, maybe bookmark this or keep this somewhere on a notepad, just to make sure that you have a reference of it throughout the course in case you ever want to go and review the contents or changes of some lecture, you will have it there. All right, let's move on.